Welcome to the Field Notes podcast, presented by Seaworthy Functional Medicine. Seaworthy exists to help you overcome your complex health challenges so you can be fully vital. Now, here's your host, Dr. Rob Downey.
What do we need to know to keep our hearts really healthy? Today, we are so fortunate to be joined by Angie Gallagher. Pardon me. Welcome, Angie.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So, fill in anything about your bio that will help our audience, who I thank for joining us. But you're an exercise physiologist, you're a certified health coach, you're a HeartMath practitioner that I would like to invoke a little bit today because I'm a huge fan of HeartMath. But you spent a lot of years in settings that were you did a lot of rehab, is that right? And was
I
that sort of
did.
disenchanting about what didn't work for people's hearts to be healthy? Should we start there?
Yes,
Is that your
yes,
origin
100%.
story if you were a comic
Yes.
book hero?
I love my origin story. Um, so I worked in cardiac rehab for 25 years, and I actually started and ran the cardiac rehab program at the hospital where I was for 23 years. So it was my baby. I started it because I wanted to help people. I came out of grad school with a master's in clinical exercise physiology, and I really wanted to help people recover and go on to live long, healthy, active lives without worrying about their heart. And it felt like we were doing that for a while. But then as the longer I was there, I was like, we saw this guy last year. He's back with another heart attack. And pretty soon this was like getting to be more and more common. And what really was upsetting to me is when I was seeing the younger, healthier ones coming back. They were,
Hmm.
and I knew like they were active, they had jobs that were manual, they didn't have any of the classic risk factors, and yet here they were again, second heart attack, third heart attack. And it's like, this is not okay. And they just kept being told, this is your genetics. You can just plan on this being you're probably just going to be kind of a frequent flyer. And that was what they were being told. And there was something in me that's like, that's not the end of the story. So as I was going to different conferences and listening to people talk about some of these advanced cardiac markers that we're not testing in Western medicine. And I started diving in a little bit to it, and I found a functional medicine doctor in the local area, and I reached out to her and I said, should we be doing these? Should we be doing these advanced tests and not just looking at the basic lipid panel? And she's like, yeah, we actually should. And if you really want to know more about how to truly reduce cardiac risk, come sit down with me and let's talk. And she gave me 2 hours of her time, and she shared with me the connection between the gut and the heart and the nervous system, and just all of the other factors that are involved, which we were not even touching on in regular
Hmm.
Western medicine. So
Hmm.
my mind was
Hmm.
blown, and I went back to school and I got certified as a functional medicine wellness coach. I started working with a functional medicine doctor in my area, and I got some of our cardiac patients to see him. And lo and behold, they got off the merry-go-round.
Hmm.
Once they started working with him and he addressed their gut health, reduced their inflammation, um, you know, all of the functional medicine basics, they no more heart issues. So
Mm. Wow.
yeah.
What year was that inflection point that you just
So let's see.
characterized?
I ended up getting fired in 2021 because I was using some of these functional medicine practices and teaching patients some dietary principles and recommending things that the dietitians got a little bent out
Hmm.
of shape over because they hadn't
Mm.
learned this stuff. They were still teaching kind of the older just eat all the grains that you want, just don't eat any eggs, and just and so
Yeah.
they were like, who does she think she is? She's not a dietitian. And I ended up getting fired for trying to
Mm.
help people improve their metabolic health. That was 2020. I had been um, coaching with these functional medicine practices for a couple of years at that point.
Yeah. Their loss.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
I think not that today's about my origin story, but I think a lot of us who care about this kind of have to take an integrity stand, and
Yeah.
sometimes then the winds of circumstance push us
Yeah.
uh, a different place, and uh, that's can be really challenging, but that's what we have to do to show up.
Right. And it might feel a little painful in the moment, but in the back of my mind, I was like, I know this is the right thing.
Hmm.
Even
Yeah.
as I was sitting there being fired, I was like being grilled by the HR lady and made to feel like a criminal. But in the back of my mind, I was just like at total peace because I knew I didn't do anything wrong with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, let's talk about what doctors are not measuring that we have to know to reduce our risk of having an heart attack.
Yeah. So, this is one thing I really like to talk about with new clients because they just don't know this stuff. So, basically, your doctor's they're gonna measure your blood sugar, your fasting glucose, and they're gonna measure your basic lipid panel, like cholesterol, triglycerides, LDL, HDL. I mean, unless you have already been shown to have high blood sugars over 100, they're probably not doing a hemoglobin A1C. And then they're certainly not measuring your fasting insulin. So they're getting a very, very small look at your metabolic health. And so many times, like you probably had seen this, unless your blood sugar is over 100, they don't really flag it. But 98 or 99 is just a couple points away from pre-diabetic. And they're just like, oh, you're in
Hmm.
the normal range. And so it's just like how many people are going on and with these high values that are just a couple points below being pathogenic, and they're just like, oh, you're fine.
Hmm.
So this
Hmm.
is, so the metabolic markers, they're not measuring the other side of the equation with the fasting insulin to really look at insulin resistance or insulin sensitivity. Of course, they're not measuring inflammatory markers to understand if you've got inflammatory issues happening, which could, tie back to the gut health piece. They're not measuring, looking at oxidative stress. They're not measuring the balance in your nervous system. I mean, there's all these things that are going on under the hood that people just don't know, and they're not
Hmm.
being tested for. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So, as a connect the dots moment for our audience, the hemoglobin A1C is the 10-week blood sugar, sort of how many sugars are stuck to the oxygen carrying molecule. So, it's a really cool way for us to know what people's sugars have been doing for 10 weeks. As Angie alluded to, there's these tighter cutoffs in functional and integrative and holistic medicine in
mhm.
terms of insulin and blood sugar dynamics. What markers do you like to have around oxidative stress and inflammation?
Yeah. So so in the basic easy inflammatory marker is the high sensitivity CRP. So that's just kind of like a baseline that I'll have people order. We can, I also like to get homocysteine,
Hmm.
those two generally speaking, and then for oxidative stress, looking at an oxidized LDL. And then I actually just found out about this 8-OHDG. I don't know if you're familiar with that one,
Hmm.
but
Hmm. Yeah.
that one, so those two, and then you can also measure your antioxidant status to see where you're at with that. So those are just
Yeah.
basic ones that you could ask for.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. The 8-OHDG looks at damage to DNA as a consequence of oxidative stress. I like that you're invoking that we can either look at the damage side of the equation or the capacity to quench
Yes.
oxidative
Yeah.
stress. And I love these
Yes.
multifaceted protocols. It's come up more recently that there's this whole emerging domain now of increased access to labs.
Yeah.
Do you mind my asking, as a coach, how then your clients are able to access labs? Is that a good
So typically
question?
what I'll do is I will give them a list of the things that I would like them to have and just say, go ask your doctor.
Yeah.
And most of the time the doctors will
Yeah.
say, sure, like what, I'm glad you're taking ownership of your health. Yeah, happy to order. I've had a couple where they've kind of pushed back and didn't want to order some of them. And
Hmm.
so then I can basically have them go through like Rupa Health or something like that, and they can get anything they want. They just have to pay for it.
Right
Like
on.
won't cover
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Cool. Very helpful. Well, let's talk about the gut heart axis because
Hmm.
our audience is going to resonate with this.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. Oh my
Folks who are
gosh.
interested in functional medicine know the gut affects, it's sort of at the center of this wagon wheel, right?
Right.
There's gut function and there are spokes going out. I always characterize it as the cornerstone and foundation of our functional
Yes.
medicine house.
Yep. Yep.
But what should we know about the specifics of how our gut affects our heart?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just it's so intertwined. And I think about all these patients that I had in cardiac rehab and seeing like they're on like 20 different pharmaceutical medications, right? And like over half of them are on acid blocking medications. So right away, we already know that they have issues with absorption and breakdown of food. And it's like, and when I look back, I think, God, I didn't know what I didn't know, but gosh, if I could only go back and like talk to
Hmm.
these people about their gut, because I know so many of them had issues. So yeah, we want a nice tight barrier, right? Our gut wall is basically just that very thin layer between the outside world and our inside world. And if we don't have a good intact gut wall, then things get through that shouldn't. So we call that leaky gut, increased membrane permeability. But stuff gets through the gut wall. And then, as you know, the immune system is right inside and it's going to respond to things that are getting through that we don't want to get through. So your immune system is just there chronically like, oh, something else is coming through that we don't recognize, it shouldn't be here. So let's go on attack mode. And that's just happening chronically when we have a leaky gut. And that can be because of food sensitivities. It can be because we have dysbiosis in our microbiome, certain medications, stress, like all these things can cause us to have that increased permeability or that leaky gut. And then that is then again creating this sort of battlefield in the immune system, creating systemic widespread inflammation then throughout the body, because the immune system is then attacking its own tissue in some cases, leading to autoimmunity. But that inflammation is directly affecting the lining of the arteries that feed the heart. So we end up with
Hmm.
endothelial dysfunction and increased risk for plaque buildup and increased risk for heart attack.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, the just endless dividends to be paid from
Yeah.
attending to and learning about our gut, whether it's empirically via common sense principles or managing the stress or switching to whole food or decreasing the alcohol consumption or avoiding pesticides in food or getting the testing done, optimizing gut
So
function, endless.
right. So many things.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to say. It's like, if you can't do this one thing, then there's like a myriad of other things you can do. So it's like we have so many choices and ways to improve our health. We don't have to feel hopeless because one or two things are out of our control or we don't have the means to work on those, because there's so many other things we can do.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, let's talk about nervous system balancing and how that
Yes.
affects our heart health. And is this where HeartMath comes in? Is there time to invoke a
Yes.
little bit of that?
Yes, yes. This is my favorite. This is actually like my favorite area, I think, is nervous system health and the ties to heart health. So yeah, so a nervous system, like, right, we have our sympathetic and our parasympathetic side of our nervous system. We want to be able to activate either when necessary. So, when we need to be in our sort of fight or flight mode, like we can activate that, we can get into that. But then when we're not needing to be in that mode, we are very easily able to get into that parasympathetic rest and digest side of the nervous system, where we want to be when we're doing things like having a meal or just sitting at our desk working. We don't want to be in fight or flight. However, in many cases, because of all the stressors people are under, there's just, I mean, we could go on and on about the sources of stress, right? But there's all these environmental stressors or even stressors we create within our own mind that's putting us into that fight or flight state, even when we're just kind of sitting. We don't need to be rescuing somebody from a burning car. Like we are just sitting, we're in that stressed out state. And I found so many of my clients have been in it so long, they don't even recognize it anymore. They've been
Hmm.
stressed for so long that feels like their baseline norm. And until I put them on a HeartMath sensor and I give them in real time the feedback, they're like, oh my God, I
Hmm.
have no idea. And I'm like, I'm
Hmm.
watching them breathe. I'm like, do you realize that you're shallow breathing? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, let's just start with changing the way you breathe. And so we'll change, I'll guide them on changing the way they breathe. And right away, we're seeing on the heart math improvement,
Hmm.
and they're shifting over into that parasympathetic. So when we are in that stressed out state all the time, that's leading to a lot of changes physiologically, right? One of those being increased cortisol. Cortisol, we want to be high when it's needed to be high, but then when we're in that stressed out state, it's like high all the time. And then that's going to be leading to inflammatory issues, stress inside the artery, increased blood pressure and triglycerides. So it's going to increase all in blood sugar, all the things that are damaging to the arteries of our walls, which again then lead to increased risk for heart issues. So that was a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
words. Sorry.
It's great. It's great. It's my favorite thing too. I always share that the most important thing is for people to be in a state of peace. And then really heart
Yeah.
math and heart rate variability has become the way I explain it. And I share the same thing that so many of us in Western industrialized settings, we don't know that we're stressed out. We can't feel it.
Right.
And
It's become
so
our
this,
norm.
yeah, this quantification of it where we can see our HRV, see if we're in a coherent heart rhythm, and
Mhm.
then in real time see what supports HRV and what doesn't via true neurofeedback because the data on the screen tells us. For
Yes.
me, I was blown away. I thought I'd have better HRV and a more coherent heart rhythm when I reflected on the blessings of my family, which are incredibly valuable, but the emotional complexity and the worry that goes with loving people actually was not where the action was for my HRV. And when I thought about
Yeah.
being grateful for the fresh air in Alaska or the feeling of a warm pair of socks coming out of the dryer, my HRV
Mhm.
went up. And so just the
Yeah.
fact that people in real time can determine what they need to do to
Yeah.
be, to be chill in a
Absolutely.
world that doesn't feel like
Yes.
it promotes being chill and restored, I think is a great
Yes.
blessing.
I love that. And that's so funny because my last heart math session, my client said the same thing. I said, okay, we're going to have you activate a feeling of gratitude or love, and we're just going to measure and see what happens. And it actually went down. And I said, tell me what you're experiencing. And she's like, well, I was thinking about my granddaughter and how much I love her, but then that led me into, I worry about her and, whatever's going on in her life. And then I started thinking about this friend of mine that I really love. And then I was started thinking, but I don't get to see her very often. And I was lamenting that I don't get to see her enough, and so it sort of spiraled
Hmm.
that like, and then people like, it's like you don't want to feel guilty because thinking about your child doesn't get you into that state of total peace. But it's right, it comes along with worry. So sometimes we
Yeah.
have something that just is like it's just pure bliss. There's nothing, for me it would be like getting out into I'm a trail runner. So it's like thinking about the last
Yeah.
like amazing trail run I did.
Yeah. 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 It's sometimes it's a blessing we won't give ourselves because it feels almost too good.
Yeah,
And I think that's a great gift to give ourselves if something makes us feel great without any strings or any ballast, then
100%.
that's good for our hearts.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Well, we talked about blood sugar a little bit, but I think this is a really cool fulcrum. This There's so much focus on cholesterol, uh, but one of your premises is that blood sugar matters more than cholesterol. Let's talk about that. This is probably going to
Mhm.
blow people away a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to, do science speak because that's not who I am, but, from everything that I have been learning since my functional medicine training is that metabolic health, so basically our ability to to be able to break down, process, utilize blood sugar or sugar, glucose, is highly indicative of metabolic health, and metabolic health is highly linked to cardiac health. So when it takes a lot of insulin to be able to pull blood sugar out of the blood and get it stored, that's an indicator that we are not very insulin sensitive. We have insulin resistance. So we've got excess insulin. So now we've got extra blood sugar in the blood. We've got too much sugar in the blood, and we've also got too much insulin circulating because the
Mhm.
receptors on the cells are not sensitive enough to get the blood sugar in. So you've got this like increased both of those things, insulin, blood sugar in the blood causing damage to the endothelial wall. So this is actually creating direct damage to the endothelium, causing it to be dysfunctional, and then causing there to be, that can just lead to plaque buildup. Whereas cholesterol is a necessary component in the body. People, I think, misunderstand that. Like we've been, I think, taught cholesterol is just bad. And cholesterol is needed in so many things, right? Like we know it's needed in the membrane of cells. We know it's needed to produce bile. We know it's needed to produce hormones. And yet we demonize it and try to say, and then in many cases, like we're trying to push it down as far as we can with statin medications. And it's a needed component. So we need to recognize, how it's involved in the body. And then the LDL and the HDL are the carriers of it. So if cholesterol is a repair agent, like it's needed to repair something, then we need to have LDL to carry it to that site to repair. And when we have damage to the endothelial wall, cholesterol gets shuttled there to repair the damage. So it's not the reason for the damage. The damage is caused by poor metabolic health. And then cholesterol is sort of like, I always tell my clients, cholesterol, it's like blaming cholesterol for heart disease is like blaming the firefighter for the water damage after a house fire.
Mm.
It's not the firefighter's fault that the
Mm.
water damage is there because they
Yeah.
had to show up to put out the fire. So cholesterol
Yeah.
shows up to repair the damage that's being done by oxidative stress, inflammation, poor metabolic health, high blood sugar, high insulin. So we're blaming the wrong person. We're blaming the wrong. And so that's why I try to tell people, get your metabolic health under control, reduce your inflammation, reduce your oxidative stress, balance your nervous system, and then cholesterol won't be a problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, such a great analogy. Love that.
It works.
Yeah. Well, you've mentioned oxidative stress. Do you want to kind of uh, specifically characterize that for people? This was one of the ones I historically found kind of hard to describe until I would just say to folks, you cut an apple, you leave it on the counter, and when you look at it half an hour later, it's brown. That's oxidation.
Mhm,
When your fence rusts, that's oxidation. It's
mhm.
just the cost of doing business, including we make energy via
Right,
oxidative
exactly.
phosphorylation. So,
Yes,
oxygen's a
yes,
really key player, but we pay a price for being able to make 18 times more energy packets than anaerobic critters.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, oxidation is an important part of our physiology. It's happening all the time, just to live. So I always try to tell people, don't freak out about oxidation because we can't not have it. But what are you doing to balance the reactive oxygen species? So, we have the free radicals, which are stealing electrons from other molecules to be able to neutralize themselves. So we need to have enough antioxidants that they're there to have that extra electron to spare. So the antioxidants are going around neutralizing the free radicals. And so how are you increasing your anti-inflammatory status? What can we do? So I talk a lot about, eating the rainbow, making sure you're getting at least 12 to 15 different plant foods per day. And for a lot of people, they're used to having like a vegetable for dinner and a fruit for lunch. Breakfast might
Yeah.
be a bagel, lunch might be like they might have an apple, and at dinner they might have some broccoli. They're literally
Hmm.
having two plant foods in a day.
Right. Right.
And so
Yeah.
there's so much room for improvement. There's so much room to balance that. I mean, I'm a proponent of doing some supplementation, when people are open to that, getting a good antioxidant supplement on board can be helpful. And I know I've had my antioxidant status checked and it was really high. And I do take, a few supplements. But I eat 12 to 15 different plant foods per day.
Yeah.
So
Right
that's
on.
so good for your gut too. So really, like, really making a point of getting at least 5 different plant foods at every meal. That's what I
Hmm.
tell people.
Yeah.
Try and get at least 5 different plant foods at every meal. And if you can't get any plant foods at breakfast, then you got to increase them at lunch and dinner. That is
Mm.
going to hugely support your antioxidant status.
Yeah. We have in my practice the Genova NutriVal, which is a micronutrient analysis.
Okay.
It'll tell people their antioxidants, B vitamins, minerals,
Yeah.
amino acids, essential
Yeah.
fatty acid. So lots of just so many different facets, I
Yeah.
think, of how people can get the
Yeah.
information, which is really cool.
Glutathione. Yeah.
Yeah.
The doctor that I work for does that test as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to close with a really fun one. Vitamin N. What's vitamin N,
Mm,
Angie?
it's my favorite. Nature. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, and so tying it back to the nervous system. So there's ample evidence, I mean, science that shows what happens to the nervous system when we get out into nature. It is very calming for our nervous system. So, touching the earth. So even if you can't get out into a forest or green space of some kind, even just going out and putting feet on the earth, putting feet on the ground, putting feet in your grass. When I worked at the hospital, I would go out at lunch and take my shoes off and put my feet in the grass. Sometimes I'd walk the neighborhood and walk on the edges of people's lawns, and just getting my feet on the earth. So
Hmm.
however you can connect to nature, whether it's getting out into the forest, any kind of, meadow to the ocean, even getting into different types of ecosystems, you're going to be exposed to different microbes in the air, and that's actually really helpful for the gut. So we breathe in these microbes, and exposing ourselves to different ecosystems can be really great for microbiome health. Just being in the trees, connecting to, hugging a tree calms the nervous system, puts you into that parasympathetic. There's anti-inflammatory benefits in the terpenes in the air. So there's just so much. And I would challenge the listeners, just to make a point, if that's not something you do regularly, see where's your closest green space, where's the closest trail, where's the closest place you can get into nature and get away from cars and EMF, and just see how you feel. Just notice a difference
Mm.
in what your body feels like.
Mm. Yeah, I'm so glad you're invoking that. And I really like your reminder to folks that uh you don't there's just about anywhere you live, there's a way to find a version of this.
Yes.
And so there's a real equality in that
Yes.
it's more just about the person sort of asking themselves,
Hmm.
am I again, is this something I'm giving myself, or am I
Yes.
going to explore this? And some of the urban versions are really interesting and really beautiful around green
Yeah.
spaces or
Yeah,
things like
there's
that.
something, there's something wherever you are, there's something. There's a park, there's a baseball diamond, there's maybe a little patch of lawn or something, but just getting out and putting your feet on the earth, connecting, it's harder in the winter, when there's snow on the ground, but some people will go
Mhm.
out and walk barefoot in the snow. And so I just think, like you said, look at it as a gift that you're giving yourself, not as like something else on my to-do list. You don't want to put nature as like something else to stress over. That should be something that you think of as a gift that you're giving to yourself.
Mhm.
Finding
Yeah.
closest place, finding a buddy to do it with. Maybe you need an accountability buddy. Part of the reason I get out into the forest as often as I do is because I have running partners, and they'll go out there with me. And that way we're also like strength in numbers because there's wildcats. So
Yeah.
I'm always
Yeah.
happy to
Where
have people with me.
where you live's a little bit more like where I live. Yeah. So, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Well, you're sort of 4 to 5 years into this Throttle Wide Open chapter. So what do you know now that you didn't know 4 years ago? Let's close with that. Give people a chance to kind of look under the hood of your process.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many things. So many things. Let's see. I think I would say that just the three brains. So we have the brain, right? And then our gut is known as the second brain, and our heart is known as our third brain. And that there's wisdom in all of those areas, that the microbiome is actually taking care of us. It's like the symbiotic relationship that we have, and it's taking care of us, but we have to take care of it. And the heart is sending more signals to the brain, and the brain is sending to the heart. So when we tap into that power, when we tap into the recognizing that we can create these coherent rhythms by slowing down our breathing, by activating that gratitude, by sometimes doing less than doing more, we can
Mm.
balance the nervous system. We can come to that place of calm and inner peace, which is going to dramatically reduce our cardiac risk. So I think that just that recognition of that triad, those three brains, how they all work together. The heart sends signals to the gut, to the nervous system, to the brain. So really just slowing down your breathing, recognizing when you're feeling that sort of state of inner kind of like rattled feeling, and just breathing, just like recognizing it, breathing deeply, and then cultivating gratitude.
Wonderful.
Mm.
What a blast getting to talk to you today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Thanks for
having
sharing
me.
your
It's been
wisdom.
really fun.
Where can people find you?
So I'm at heartwellnesscoaching.com. And then on Facebook, I'm Heart Wellness Coaching. Instagram and TikTok, I'm Heart Wellness Coach. I'm also on Pinterest. So Heart Wellness
Super.
Coaching. Yeah.
Super. I'm glad people know where they can find you. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be inspired to think about taking that next step.
Oh, thank you. I hope so.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for joining us for the Seaworthy podcast. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. If you think we've earned it, please consider giving this podcast a like, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. Thanks.